I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Jessica, for about 8 years now. We seemed like the perfect couple on paper, at least for the most part. She's gorgeous, ambitious, and she used to be pretty loving until the last few months. Things started changing after her mom died suddenly last year. She became more bitchy, short-tempered, and kind of cold. I figured grief was messing with her, but I should have seen the warning signs earlier. It all started around that time. Jessica would leave her phone around more often, get defensive when I asked about her texts, and she'd sometimes disappear into the bedroom for hours without explanation. I didn't have concrete proof she was cheating, but I just had this gut feeling. I'd catch her lying about where she was going, who she was talking to. At first, I thought maybe she was just grieving and lashing out, maybe even talking to friends for support. But deep down, I knew something was off. I mean, she's always been a bit bitchy, but her attitude turned to outright hostility toward me. One night, I decided to check her phone after she went to bed. Nothing strange at first, just her usual social media scrolling, some messages from her work friends. But then I noticed a notification pop up on her chat app that she hadn't logged out of. It was from a number saved as BFF, but the message underneath wasn't from her usual friends. It was from someone named Ryan, and the message was pretty explicit. Something about how much he loved the way she looked, how they shouldn't keep playing the game, and a bunch of other sexual stuff. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further and there were dozens of these messages, some from months ago, some recent. It was obvious they'd been talking for a while, and worse, I realized they'd probably been doing more than just exchanging dirty texts. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My mind spun. I looked at her sleeping, peaceful face, and I couldn't believe I'd missed all this. How could she lie so convincingly? How long has this been going on? I stayed awake all night, staring at her, trying to process what I'd found. I was furious, hurt, and completely betrayed. I didn't know who this woman I married really was anymore. The one I loved, the one I trusted, was she just pretending to be that person all along? That's when I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just explode. I needed to see what she'd say, how deep it went, and what her excuses would be. The next morning, I woke up early, and I could feel all the adrenaline rushing through me. I waited until she was in the shower, then quietly grabbed her phone from the nightstand and scrolled through her messages again, taking screenshots of everything. I needed proof, but I also needed to keep my cool. I knew she'd lie, deny, or twist everything to her advantage, but I wanted to be ready. I didn't want her to gaslight me or turn it around on me. I was already feeling a mix of sadness and rage. Like, how could she do this during the worst time of my life? Her mom just died, and she's out there cheating on me with my best friend, Ryan. How could she be so cold and manipulative? I kept the evidence hidden for now, but I also decided I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I had to figure out my next move. I knew the confrontation was coming, and I had to be prepared for her lies, her gaslighting, and her bullshit. But beneath all that, I just felt numb. It was like everything I believed in was crashing down around me. I didn't even know who she really was anymore, and honestly, I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. All I knew is that this betrayal was going to change everything. That night I confronted her. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was tired of pretending everything was normal, tired of being the fool who didn't see what was right in front of him. I sat her down in the living room, my hands trembling slightly, and I laid all the evidence out on the coffee table. Her phone, the screenshots, everything. Jessica's face twisted with that typical bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. "What the hell is this, Mike?" she snapped, crossing her arms. "You have no right to go through my stuff. You're crazy if you think I'm cheating on you." Her tone was sharp, dismissive, like I was some paranoid lunatic. That's her go-to move: deny, deny, deny. She always lied convincingly, like she was an actress in her own little drama. I stared at her, feeling the anger bubble up. "You've been texting Ryan, telling him you love him, that you're sick of pretending, that you want him to come over. How long has this been going on, Jessica? Don't lie. I want the truth now." Her eyes flickered some, then she rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Ryan's just a friend, you're overreacting as usual. Maybe I was venting or maybe I sent a few dirty texts. Big deal. You're acting like I'm having sex with him or something." Her voice was dripping with sarcasm, but I could hear the slight tremor in her tone. Like she was trying to brush it off, but I could see her eyes darting away, avoiding my gaze. Really? Just a friend? Then why were there pictures of her in lingerie, talking about how much she wants to feel his hands on her? I shot back, my voice rising. I slipped the screenshots across the table, watching her reaction. She hesitated for a second, then snatched them up and quickly started scrolling, acting like she was unfazed. But I saw her quick glance at the messages she'd written, the way her face paled just a little. She finally huffed and looked at me. "Look, Mike, this isn't what it looks like. I was just venting. We're not actually having sex, I swear. Ryan's just a friend, an old buddy. We were drunk and I said some stupid stuff. It doesn't mean anything. You're blowing this way out of proportion because you're insecure." She tried to brush it off with a laugh, but I saw the desperation behind her eyes. She's a bitch, yeah, but she's also a good liar, and I knew she was spinning her web even now. I felt my stomach turn. How could she say that? How could she lie so easily? I wanted to believe her, part of me did, but the evidence was pretty damning. The messages, the lingerie pictures, the way she was trying to act innocent. This was more than just a drunken mistake. This was betrayal on a level I'd never experienced before. I couldn't believe I married someone like her. All those nights she'd said she loved me, all the times she'd told me I was her everything. Turns out she was just screwing around with my best friend behind my back. During my mother's funeral, no less. I mean, who does that? Who cheats during the worst day of your life? It was a sickening thought. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again, but this time it was worse because I'd trusted her. I'd thought we had something real. Turns out I was just deluding myself. Her lies kept flowing. She insisted she didn't want Ryan, that she was just mad and upset, and that she'd never do anything to hurt me. She called Ryan a stupid mistake, claimed they were just texting, and that she'd never actually slept with him. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but her words felt hollow. Her face was so convincing with her fake tears and her "I'm the victim" act, but I knew better. I'd seen her true face now, and it was a bitchy, manipulative one. The worst part was that I felt a strange mix of anger, heartbreak, and just pure disappointment. I'd always thought Jessica was a strong, independent woman. Turns out she's a liar, a cheater, and a master manipulator. During that confrontation, I knew I couldn't stay with someone who'd do this to me, especially not during such a fragile time. But that was just the beginning. The shock was still sinking in, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. I had to make a decision, and fast. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I was stuck in this terrible limbo where I endlessly replayed everything she said, every lie, every excuse. Jessica kept calling, texting, begging me to believe her, to give her a chance to explain. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to happen, that she was just overwhelmed and made a stupid mistake. But how do you forgive something like that? How do you even look at someone the same way after discovering they've been lying and cheating during arguably the worst period of my life? I decided I needed space, so I took a couple of days to think. I moved into the guest room trying to get some clarity. Meanwhile, Jessica was relentless. She'd come to the door trying to talk, trying to plead, and honestly, I just felt numb. Every time she tried to spin her bullshit, I felt like I was losing a little more of myself. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? Was I so blind? Was I just a fool that trusted her blindly? One morning, I found myself in the garage, going through some old stuff. I was trying to distract myself, but then I spotted her laptop. I decided to check it. Maybe I'd find more proof, or maybe just some answers. I hesitated for a second. Part of me wanted to respect her privacy, but another part just needed to know the truth. I sat down, logged in, and searched through her messages and browser history. Nothing shocking there, yet. But then I remembered her email account. Something told me to look there. I found an encrypted folder she'd hidden deep in her files. Somehow, I remembered her mentioning she liked to keep secret stuff. There, I cracked it open, and what I found made my heart stop. There were dozens of emails, some from Ryan, some from other guys, all filled with dirty talk, plans to meet up, promises of never telling a soul. It wasn't just a one-time fling. No, this was going on for months, maybe even longer. The emails were detailed, intimate, and cold, like she was just playing a game, a way to get off, while I was at home grieving my mother. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time worse because I'd been so blind. She'd been lying to my face for months, hiding her other life behind a facade of being the good wife. The betrayal was staggering. My stomach twisted with rage and heartbreak. I couldn't believe I'd spent years loving someone who was capable of this kind of deception. I sat there in the garage, staring at the screen. It was like a punch to the chest every time I read another message. How could someone do this during the funeral, during the wake? I remembered her bitchy attitude, the way she snapped at everyone, crying crocodile tears to appear innocent. Meanwhile, she was out there screwing my best friend, lying to me every step of the way. I couldn't believe I was even considering staying. Honestly, I was furious. Not just at her, but at myself for trusting her so blindly. It was like I'd built this entire life on a lie, and now I was left picking up the pieces. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? How did I not see this coming? But deep down, I knew it wasn't my fault. It was her choice, her selfish, manipulative choice to betray me, to lie and cheat during the worst time of my life. At that moment, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to face reality. Jessica wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was a liar, a cheater, and a snake. And Ryan, that bastard, had been feeding her all those lies, fueling her betrayal. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see the signs? Every piece of evidence was right there in front of me, and I'd ignored it. Now I had to decide what to do next. I made a decision that night. I was done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the bullshit. I knew I couldn't rebuild what was broken. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was going to end this once and for all. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I was hurt, angry, and broken, but I also knew I deserved better. I deserved someone who wouldn't stab me in the back while I was mourning my mother. That's when I started planning how to confront her, how to end it all, and finally move on. The confrontation I'd been dreading finally came a few days later. Jessica was persistent, knocking on my door, begging me to talk. I kept telling her I needed space, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. I knew I had to face her to get it all out in the open, even if I felt like I was about to explode. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and looked her straight in the eyes. "Jessica," I said, voice cold and steady, "I've seen everything. The emails, the messages, the photos. You've been cheating on me for months with Ryan." She tried to deny it again, that same bitchy smirk on her face. "It's not what it looks like, Mike. You're overreacting. I didn't mean for it to get this far. It was just sex, just some stupid fun. I swear I never wanted to hurt you." "Stop," I cut her off. "Don't lie to me now. I know everything. You've been hiding this, betraying me during my mother's funeral while I was broken inside. How could you be so cold? How long were you planning this?" Her face contorted into a mask of anger and contempt. "You think I planned this? You're pathetic, Mike. You're so insecure you always think I'm cheating. I told you I was stressed, that I was sad about my mom. You wouldn't even listen. Now you're suddenly the victim. Please. Ryan and I never meant anything serious. It was just sex, and it meant nothing. You're just jealous because you're not satisfying me anymore." That was when I snapped. I'd had enough of her lies, her excuses, her bullshit. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative, so willing to trash everything we had for a quick fuck. I looked at her and felt my blood boil. "You're a selfish bitch, Jessica. You've been screwing Ryan behind my back during the worst time of my life. I trusted you, I loved you. And you were just using me as a cover, weren't you?" She sneered. "You think you're some sort of victim. You're nothing, you're weak, you're a loser. You're just mad because I found someone better than you. Ryan's better in bed, better at everything. You're not even enough for me anymore, Mike. That's why I did it. I don't even care. You mean nothing to me." That hit me like a freight train. I felt a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and disgust. Her words cut deep, but I knew I had to stay strong. I told her to leave, to pack her things and get out of my house. I didn't want her near me anymore. I couldn't stomach the idea of her lying in my bed, pretending she was innocent. I told her I never wanted to see her again, that I was done. She left in a fury, screaming and crying, calling me names and blaming me for everything. I stood there trembling, staring after her. Part of me wanted to chase her, to beg her to stay, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. She was gone, and I was left with the wreckage of my life. I felt like an idiot for trusting her, for loving her, for believing she was who she pretended to be. That night I sat alone in my house, just trying to process what had happened. The house was eerily quiet. My mind kept flashing back to all the moments I thought were real: her smile, her kisses, the way she used to say she loved me. Now I knew it was all a lie. She'd been lying to my face for months, during my mother's funeral while I was in pain. How could I have been so blind? As I looked around, I realized I was finally free from the lies, the betrayal, the false love. But the pain was still there, gnawing at me. I trusted her with everything. Now I felt like I didn't even know who she really was. Was she ever really the woman I married? Or was she just pretending all along? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was I had to pick up the pieces and move on, no matter how hard it was. The trust was shattered, and I was left with nothing but the truth and a hell of a lot of anger. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. I'd break down randomly, sometimes in the bathroom, sometimes just staring at the wall for hours. The betrayal hit me harder than I ever expected. I kept replaying everything: her words, her lies, the moments I missed. Honestly, I kept asking myself if I could ever trust anyone again. It's like my entire foundation had been wiped out, and all I was left with was this gnawing emptiness. I started clearing out her stuff, one box at a time. It felt cathartic, like I was reclaiming my space, reclaiming myself. I found things I didn't even know she had: more messages, some photos she'd hidden, even her lingerie. I kept most of it in a bag, just to remind myself of the kind of person she really was. I didn't want to forget, not entirely. I needed to remember who she was so I wouldn't fall for her bullshit again. One night I sat down with a drink and looked through all the evidence I'd collected. It was surreal, how someone I loved could lie so convincingly, betray me behind my back during the worst time of my life. I felt so stupid for trusting her. I thought about Ryan, the supposed best friend I'd known for years. How could he do this? How could he betray me too? I'd always considered him a good guy, someone I could count on. Turns out he was just as much of a snake. I reached out to a couple of friends who had been around when I was going through my mother's funeral. I needed to talk to someone who knew me before all this happened. They were supportive, telling me I deserved better, that I was smarter than to let her manipulate me like that. But even with their support, I felt hollow. I'd lost the person I thought was my soulmate. I'd been blindsided by her bitchiness, her lies, her cheating. It was like my whole world was crashing down. I started thinking about what I'd do next. The breakup was inevitable, but I wasn't sure I was ready to jump into dating again. Honestly, I didn't trust anyone anymore. I felt like I had been so naive, so blind to her true nature. Part of me wanted to cut all ties, burn every memory of her, and just start over. But I also knew I'd need some time to heal, to rebuild my trust in myself and others. In the back of my mind, I kept wondering if I was making the right decision. Should I try to work things out? Could she possibly change? But the truth was, how could I ever trust her again after everything? I realized that some betrayals cut too deep. Once trust is broken like that, it's almost impossible to repair it. Especially not when she lied during my mother's funeral. That's the kind of betrayal that leaves permanent scars. I decided I had to move on. No contact, no looking back. I filed for divorce, and I promised myself that I'd focus on healing. I started going to therapy to work through the anger and pain, and slowly I began to see a path forward. Not an easy one, but maybe a better one. I learned a lot through this mess, mostly that I deserved someone honest, someone who wouldn't cheat or lie behind my back, especially not during a time of grief. In the end, I think what I've learned the most is that you can't control other people's actions. All you can do is protect yourself and learn to recognize the red flags early on. I wish I'd seen them sooner, but now I know what to look for. I know not to ignore the little signs, like defensiveness, secrecy, or bitchy attitude that mask something darker. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's shattered, it's almost impossible to put back together. But life goes on. I'll get through this. I have to. Looking back now, I realize this whole ordeal has changed me in ways I never expected. I used to believe in the idea of forever, of trust and loyalty being rock solid. But everything I thought I knew about love and honesty was shattered during those dark months. The betrayal during my mother's funeral, how cold and calculated it was, really opened my eyes to how toxic and manipulative the people around me could be. Jessica's bitchy attitude, her constant lies, her manipulation, none of it was worth the heartbreak I endured. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware of the signs of betrayal. I've become someone who values honesty above all else, even if it means being alone for a while. I cut her out completely, no contact, no regrets. I had to remind myself that I deserve someone who respects me, who loves me for who I am, and who wouldn't betray me during my most vulnerable moments. That's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. Trust is earned, not given blindly. Honestly, I feel like I'm starting over from scratch, wounded but stronger. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I can rebuild my life. I've started focusing on myself, on my career, my friends, and finding happiness again. Slowly, the pain subsides, replaced by a sense of relief that I don't have to carry her deception anymore. That weight of betrayal is finally lifting. If there's anything I want to pass on to anyone reading this, especially those who might be going through something similar, it's this: listen to your gut. Don't ignore the small red flags and don't be afraid to confront the truth. Sometimes, facing it head-on is the only way to heal and move on. Trust is precious, and once broken, it's hard to mend, but life does go on. You can survive the pain, learn from it, and come out stronger on the other side. I'll never forget the lessons I've learned from this, and I hope anyone else dealing with betrayal finds their own strength to get through it. Because, in the end, you owe it to yourself to be honest, to be loved genuinely, and to never settle for anything less.